Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women's Football Spotlight. It's myself, Dan Conway, and my co-host Ross Ballack, and we're going to cover the Champions League and the WSL talking points. So let's get straight into it. Lots to talk about: Chelsea, Arsenal, mixed week for Chelsea, some positives for Arsenal, and mixed as well, and all the other WSL talking points. So let's get straight into Chelsea. The first half of the week, it was a loss. The Champions League 4-1 loss to Barcelona, Ross. Were you surprised?
No, I think we talked about obviously after the first leg, and I think we were both pretty certain that that was the tie over. I think for me the biggest surprise was that they shipped another four. Like
Yeah.
for the tie to finish 8-2. I did see that. I thought maybe they'd nick a narrow win in the home leg or a draw, but Barcelona. I mean, again, it's just like that first half. It was 3-0 at half time. And as soon as they scored that first goal after 25 minutes, ties over, isn't it? And it's really hard. I think it's really hard psychologically for a player to not to like be professional or anything like that, but I think even I'm like mega standard when we played. Like when you know football well enough that you know that's probably over. It's tough to get yourself like up for the battle. But yeah, 3 goals in the first half, put it to bed. And you've got to say, like, fair play to Barcelona. I
Yeah.
mean, they're we like last few years, like as a club, that you've talked. There's been a lot of talk about finances and levers and potential impropriety and not being able to use the new camp whilst it's being redone, having to go to a smaller stadium. But they're at, like, I don't know whether it's a byproduct of not necessarily having the money they would like to spend across the club, but they're on for three lots of trebles. So the men's team are on for a treble, the women's team are on for a treble, and their youth team, they're like B team, I think, or the under 18s, but they're on for a treble in their age groups as well. And that probably, I think that gives you a sense that something good's happening at the club, and perhaps being forced to kind of cut their cloth accordingly could be a good thing. But I think what's interesting is if you looked at it like purely from a like financial perspective, I think you'd probably expect Chelsea to have won. That
Well,
tie with the players they have and the salaries they're paying, but that's why we love football. That's not how football's played, and I guess my first thought would be like, it was after the game was when I saw the score, I was like, if you're someone like Kira Walsh, who's left Barcelona halfway through the season to come to Chelsea, I wonder, I wonder if there's any sense of what if I'd just seen out my contract.
yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think Kira Walsh is an interesting point because it was just shows you how much of a big pull it was for a family because we know like halfway through being in Spain that she was missing being not as close to family, and it just shows you even though you're winning and you're dominating, just shows you that personal side of the game that sometimes gets forgotten about when transfers happen. How
Yeah,
much how much of an influence or a bigger influence that has in many instances. But yeah, I wonder if there's a bit of what if. But I think even you could tell Sonia Bompastor was surprised. I think even she didn't expect it to be like I said an 8-2 aggregate over both ties, and I think we all were. I thought to lose 4-1 to Barcelona in one leg, they're a great team. They're the Champions League holders, fine. But 8-2, I think because of Chelsea have dominated the league so much this season that I thought we expected more. And I think the players themselves would probably think they could have given a bit more, but it was just like a repeat performance. It was very similar to the previous game where Barcelona were just better. You know, they put away their chances and were all round better. That their
I mean,
attack is just so strong.
yeah, I just, they were, if you look at the stats, like dominant in possession, but just looking here, Chelsea had 19 shots to Barcelona's 7. Chelsea had 7 on target to Barcelona's 9.
They had the
And
chances.
Chelsea had 27 touches inside the Barcelona box to Barcelona's 26 inside the Chelsea box. Barcelona goalkeeper had to make 6 saves to Chelsea's 4. And you look at that and you go, it's just how clinical you could be. And I wonder if there's like a wider discussion in terms of the WSL and the league standard where perhaps they could get away, as we saw against United in midweek, with lots of shots on target, but they come away with a 1-0 win. Whereas in Europe, when you're up against that elite level, I think for me, like the latter stages of the Women's Champions League, it's up there in terms of like quality with international football.
Yeah,
And like you said, you got 3-0 down at half time at home against a team who've got, they got more of the ball, but you're having just as many shots as them, more shots on target, just as many touches in the box. It's tough, but like I think we see it like in the men's Champions League with like teams like Paris Saint-Germain. Like I look at the game they played against Villa at Villa Park, and that Villa being like in their face, particularly in the second half, and really pressing them, really forcing them to hurry. It's not something that they're used to, and I wonder if that is something that the WSL needs to look at in terms of, everyone wants the standard to go up, everybody wants the competitiveness to go up, but and that could be the offset. Maybe we do get an English team winning the Women's Champions League. It's been a long time since that's happened,
yeah.
and if we're being honest, like this is what Bombasta was brought in to do.
What did you hear? What she said after? I thought it was interesting. She said, I know now what we need to do." So interesting statement. Obviously, I don't think it's just straight up recruitment because I think Chelsea have been recruiting very well. Like their team
Yeah,
is in WSL, the quality of their team, the quality is miles apart from most of the teams. But it just shows you maybe tactical has got to be looked at, strategy, but also maybe there is some recruitment in certain areas. They've definitely got some great talent in many areas, but there's probably a couple of areas they'll probably look to kind of
yeah,
increase.
definitely. I mean, recruitment's always going to be key at any level of football. Men's or women's, and
Yeah,
and actually, while I feel she's done like a really admirable job, I think there is a bit that there's a drop off between Ramirez and Sam Kerr, and obviously Chelsea have not been able to play Sam Kerr for a
yeah,
really long time now, and she is a player. Give her the ball between the posts, particularly inside the 18-yard box, and more often than not, the ball's going to end up in the back of the net. So, like I said, we're talking about how, it's that clinical nature of Barcelona, those particularly like the 25th minute, and then the 2 goals after that came 41, 43. That's just bang, bang. That is, you know, that amount, like that clinical nature of finishing, especially when you see the stats that we've just been through. Like I think Sam Kerr's been a huge miss because she is clinical in front of goal, and like you said, like recruit. There's obviously lots of things that go into it, but I think there's probably too big a drop off between Ramirez and Kerr
yeah.
for their liking, maybe, or particularly for those big moments.
I think you make a good point with Ramirez. I'm quite a fan. I think she's a very strong presence. Like I've seen her bully defenders off in WSL where she just shrugs them off, and she's got pace and power. But you're right, she's where maybe she's got more. You could argue more strength and pace than Kerr. Kerr's positioning and finishing. are a level above.
Yeah,
And I think you're right. I think Kerr, if she gets a good preseason under her, will probably be the starting strike, and we'll see Ramirez kind of more utilised on the flanks, which she has done. But it'll also be interesting to see because you've got Aggie Beaver Jones, who's done a good job. Like they're, gradually giving her more and more time. She can play several positions, and she's proven to be fairly clinical, but still quite young. So we'll see how they keep all those strikers happy next
yeah.
season.
But I mean, you said it was a mixed week at the start of the season.
Yes.
They go from that real low, and I guess you got to praise the mentality that Wednesday night they go away to Manchester United, still the best defence in the WSL. They come away with a 1-0 win, and due to the Arsenal result, they are champions. Does
Yeah.
that surprise you at all?
No, I think what I really loved is, Lucy Bronze scored the winner. And it's funny because, it just shows you that even though I think 33, Lucy Bronze, she's still got that drive. Yes, she's had issues with her knee ongoing for years, but just shows you if you drive, your mental drive's still there. She's still, it just shows you big moments, big players, when they needed to get that goal and win the league, she did it for them. So, and I've got a credit to the cross. I'm trying to think who the assist was. Let me see. I've got a note here, but
Multiple.
yeah, it was a great cross, and it was a great header. And it was just no surprise. Did you, what did you think of the game? Were you surprised at the result?
I wasn't able to see the whole game, but one thing that really I thought was really nice is the fact that it was Baltimore that got that assist. You know, she's come over from France, her first season in WSL, and you know, a player that we're used to seeing play in like forward positions, and she's really done a job for Chelsea this season. You know, on Wednesday she was playing kind of left wing, but she has played at left back. She has played at left wing back. Um, she's really done a job for the team and been a real squad player. So I think that, like you point out Bronze scoring, but I really want to point out her as well. Like just because she's come and had to do something fairly different at times this season, and
Yeah,
not just in terms of like the language or the culture or new league, new teammates, but like her, you know, when you see players coming, like moving teams and particularly moving countries, like all those outside things can be the thing that can hold a player back. But like when players are on the grass, you know, it could come together far quicker there than maybe off it. But the fact that she's had to do so at times this season such different roles on the grass as well. I think that's like a real. I think that's a real plus to Bompastor for not just giving her that opportunity, but trusting her to do that, and her and her coaches kind of helping Baltimore fulfill those roles, but also to the player herself. Like, you know, I just think it was a real. I think it's just a real touching moment, like a real good moment for her to be able to make that contribution, like she has done all season, different positions. But I mean, I think for me, you know, like you said, it wasn't a big surprise, you know, and
that said though,
they're worthy champions. I
yeah,
don't think anyone can complain. You know, they're still unbeaten in the WSL. You know, played again. We're recording this on Sunday night. They've played again today. Got another win. There's one game left of the season for most of the clubs. Because there's a game tomorrow, but everyone's pretty much played 21 games now, and they are still unbeaten, and you can't
credit to
fault.
Bompassa though, because you think Emma Hayes was a tough act to follow. An icon in the women's game. She led Chelsea to 5 titles. Just incredible manager, and that's always going to be. You consider it in many instances. Normally, it's a poison chalice. A new coach comes in, they're not normally going to do as well the first year. Now, fortunately, this is an ex-Champions League winner, Bompastor, and she came in and arguably, like Chelsea, played some of their best football. There's a reason, like I said, they've been unbeaten and they've won ugly when they've needed to. Most of the time, they've been dominant and you know really beaten most teams quite well. But
Yeah. That has been a real change in style, I think, in terms of like the game model for Chelsea, the way they play. I think that has changed this season, particularly in Hayes's last season. You saw a lot of times where it was maybe like 3-5-2. Kerr was up front with somebody else. It was a bit more direct, and I think there's been a level of control or of control in the game this season that's been kind of added by Bompastor. But again, I'll go back to the fact that I think she will probably admit as well she's not been brought here to win WSL or the domestic prizes. She's been brought here to for the big one in the Women's Champions League, and that has eluded them again this season. But
Yeah.
as I said, you cannot fault the fact that 1-0 away to Manchester United, a tough team to play against, and then today again they've gone away to Spurs, a team who I think at the large parts of the season have been poor, but they are a team that are well organised. And again, you go away there, you get your goal, you keep a clean sheet, and you get out with the 3 points. And again, like you're champions of England. One game left of the season, still haven't been beaten in the league, and I think that's what they're gunning for now.
Well, they did obviously, unsurprisingly, they rested a number of players. I imagine there's players that have been carrying niggles, injuries, but it wasn't for Tottenham. Like Tottenham, we've had seen some tough games. Have been tough to watch for Tottenham, but 13 shots Chelsea to Tottenham's 8. 53% possession Chelsea, so it wasn't like a one-sided affair. You
No,
know,
no, no, not at all.
it was actually a reasonable, good effort from Tottenham. And going back to the Man United game when Chelsea won the league against Man United, I'll tell you what I did like, and it was the first time I can say we probably saw it. But Naomi Gurn played, and you could see the glimpses. You could see why they've bought her. She did a couple of it was almost like a goal line clearance early on in the game, and then there was a couple of I'm trying to think it was a goal line block against Clinton, a really kind of key one, and she's just I think we saw, like I said, glimpses of why they bought, and you just saw that bit of quality in defence that would look solid. And yeah, I'm excited to see how she gets on next season. Or get a pre-season under her belt. How she does, the first $1 million player in the WSL. How she cracks on in the season next season.
Yeah, well, we spoke about it again last week. It's just she's come to Chelsea with a niggle. It's difficult to just jump in the middle of the season and land on your feet for the like the easiest of moves. But she's come again, different country, different culture, new club, new teammates, all these things, and she turned up with a niggle. So yeah, it was great to see that from her. I think we'll see the best of her next season, and I think having her there from the start could be something that could help. Well, it's something that will definitely help them in the Champions League. Not that Chelsea have been poor defensively, but it's football is made a whole lot easier when you know that you have the best players in those key positions,
Yeah.
especially that spine of the team. So, yeah, so fairly mixed week for Chelsea, but congratulations to them, WSL champions,
Yes.
and
Well done,
rightly so.
Chelsea. Well, one last question on Chelsea then. So, well, two. Firstly, do you see next season? Do you see there being any different? Do you think it's going to be Chelsea's straightforward, or what does it take to close the gap between Chelsea and another WSL League winner?
Well, I have to admit, we're going to talk about Arsenal and their week next, but the fact that they have taken it as deep as they have, I think we were all pretty certain by kind of December time when they just I think won every game.
Yeah.
I don't know, I can't remember how many it is they won in the first part of the season, but it was, they put together that amazing run Chelsea did, and it was just kind of like, well, they're going to win it. You know,
Yeah.
we to say there was a title race, I think would probably be stretching the truth somewhat. But
Yeah.
the fact that Arsenal have been able to take it this deep in the season, with only, Chelsea have picked up that were confirmed as champions with 2 games left of the season. I think that's good. I mean, do I see anything different next season? Probably not. This is a Chelsea team that has not had the best of Gurma, has not had Walsh in for most of the season, and hasn't had Kerr in for most of the season. And you look at those 3 players, arguably the best centre back in women's football, arguably the best holding midfielder in women's football, and arguably the best centre forward in women's football. And you
Mm.
go, right, those 3 players are going to be in this team next season for the entire season, and Chelsea still won't have spent a penny. I just,
Yeah.
I think we're probably in for a couple of years of Chelsea dominance, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not. You go, well, if you're willing to put that money in and you're willing to push the women's game and with that first team and to pay the players and to get them into the club, like that's great. But like we spoke about already, we would like to see a bit more competitiveness in the WSL. So I mean, these aren't my like
Yeah.
25-6
Predictions. Yeah.
predictions, yeah. But I look, obviously we don't know what the other teams are going to do, but I just look around. I would expect Man City to be better next season, but other than that, you know, like I said, I don't know what Arsenal, Man United, maybe Liverpool, if they can be bothered. I don't know if they're going to do anything. And we'll talk about them later, but obviously we've got a club coming up to the WSL next season in London City Lionesses who they're not there to make up numbers. And I
Yeah.
think there could be, I think we could potentially see them not challenging for the title, but they're not going to be walkovers. And in their owner, they've got a woman who wants to push women's sport
Yeah.
all around the world, but they've got close ties with Washington Spirit in the NWSL, Lyon in France, and you know, uh, yeah. Until we know what the other team's doing, it's difficult. But if you're asking me now, it's a 12-point gap as we sit here this evening. I I don't see that changing next season. I'd have Chelsea nailed on for the WSL this season as of today because their team's just going to get stronger, and that's before they've even done any recruitment.
Yeah, no, all very fair points. Let's touch on Arsenal then, as you've kind of briefly mentioned. So Arsenal again, they've had a mixed week. Let's
What
start
did I
with.
say? What did I say last
You
week?
said they
I
would
said
come
it.
through.
I
You
said
did
it.
say they did say so. Arsenal. Just get my notes,
I said if they could get the first goal, they had
which
a
they did.
they had a
They
really
were.
good chance of going through because I didn't think Leon were too. I don't think the sides were too far apart, and actually, I felt that it was again. We talk about like the clinical nature of like scoring goals. People like the old cliche is, oh, like scoring goals is the hardest thing to do in football, but just Arsenal like at Highbury. The week before against Leon and in Madrid against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, they just didn't take their chances. And I just thought if they could take their chances, they could do it. And I think for me, obviously, like the early goal was key. So to get
It was
that after
gifted that
five
a little bit.
minutes, sorry.
They were. You had needs a bit of luck, don't you? And they were gifted that first goal from a.
Oh,
Was it defensive? Was it the defender's mistake? If I remember,
yeah, but
you
I
need a bit
think
of luck.
actually it was the fact that they were to get that second just before half time that takes them in 2-2 at half time, wind in the sails, everything's going your way, and then they came out and Russo puts one in the first minute of the second half, and you
Yeah.
just go, right, the momentum has shifted here, and you could see, that the Lyon players were essentially like they were in like quicksand, and it was just like I, the momentum's just completely shifted. So fair play to them. To me, like Slagers looks like a coach who, like, clearly, like, she knows what she's doing and she sets the team up well. But when maybe the opposition do something you're not expecting or things don't go your way, I think she does have a really good way about her in terms of reacting. Um, and I felt that obviously after that 90 minutes at Highbury, the fact that it was still so close and Arsenal had not been great in the attacking part of the pitch, I thought I wasn't surprised again to see that they had pulled through. I just think it was a really great result to go away to France and to put 4 goals against Lyon.
4-1.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember how I've lost count how many that they put in the quarterfinals. But yeah, it was just a really good performance, and was it first Champions League appearance for Arsenal
Oh, it
in
would be.
like
Well, they
a
won it in,
long
was it
time.
2006, 2007? Was the last time they won it, I think. Something
Well, I
crazy.
mean, we should probably look these things up before
Yeah.
we start talking about it. But in fairness, it's just been a long time for them, and they are one of the like foundational teams here in English women's football. Had so much success for so long. Obviously, like things have like balanced that out, and Chelsea and WSL and women's football has evolved massively. But for them, this is huge.
Yeah.
They've got Barcelona in the final, out in
Well,
Portugal. It
let's touch on that.
it's
Realistically, what generally, like, what do you think, Ross? Like, what if we play this game? I don't know. Tell me what you think. What's the reality of Arsenal potentially stealing, nicking the Champions League?
uh, I
How
would
how would they have to do it?
I would probably put it like 60-40 in Barcelona's favour, maybe a touch more.
Yeah.
I think the obviously final it's a one-off game, right? So we know football well enough, and we've watched enough football in our time to know that anything can happen in a one-off game. I think for me, I think where Arsenal are potentially vulnerable is at the back. Um, I think what
Yeah.
they need to do is they need to take their chances. They're not,
Yeah.
they're not going to get loads and loads of chances. They can't do what they did in Madrid, and they can't do what they did at Highbury against Lyon in the first leg. They need to take those chances. And if I'm being honest with you, I know it probably seems like silly to say because you played in those games, but if there is a striker around Europe at the moment who is on form and you would back to put his goals on, it is Alessia Russo. Like, her all-round play as centre forward is right up there, top in the women's game. And if she can take chances, in Kim Little and in Caldente, they've got a really really good midfield too there, and then the three in front of them, they've got options. So many options there in terms of Mead, Kelly, Manham, Blackstenius.
Caitlin Ford, all those the forward line
Yeah,
is
the
quite strong.
forward line is uh, they're good enough to on their day to give anybody a scare. I think where they are potentially vulnerable is in that back four, back five area. So I think if they can press Barcelona really well and they can stop supply coming into the forward line, I think that's what you've got to do. I don't think you can just sit back against this Barcelona team in a low block and hope to hit them on the break. I don't think that's necessarily because they will just pass the ball around. They'll be okay with you
Yeah,
doing that if they've got no pressure, and when you and if they can move the ball quick enough, the gaps will appear. I think Arsenal need to be on the front foot, and I think that is what again, I go back to the kind of the analogy with Villa and PSG, and I know it didn't work out for Villa, but I think when there are teams who maybe don't face the level of opposition on a week in, week out basis that that their opponents do, I think it is. I think that's what you got to do. You got to play for Arsenal. You've got to play on the front foot, and you have to put them under pressure, and you have to give them a different problem to solve. Don't just sit back and just hope that they don't find the gaps. They
yeah,
will. And I think, like I said, with that midfield two and that front four, they've got position. They've got the players there who can not only put that press on and be front foot, but can take their chances. So I think if they could put Barcelona under pressure with their press and take their chances, like I said, at the moment, I'd say it's kind of 60-40, maybe 65-35. Arsenal do go in as underdogs, and
yeah.
maybe that will suit them as well. But it's a Champions League final. I watched in 2005. I watched like not terrible, but like a pretty bang average Liverpool team overcome a legendary AC Milan team, and that's what happens in one-off games, and that's why we love football. We love football because not the best team doesn't always win, and that's not to say that Arsenal are a bad team, but against Barcelona, they will not be the favourites. They won't be, and maybe that's a good thing because I think whoever they would have faced in the final, they wouldn't have been favourites. I don't think they'd been favourites against Chelsea either, but yes, I think they can win it. I think they've got to take their chances. I think they're vulnerable at the back, but
Yeah.
it's a one-off game, and anything can happen. And what I hope doesn't happen, I just hope there's no like capitulation.
Yeah.
You wait for the final to come along. You don't want one team to be 3-0 up at half time.
I think you're right. Realistically, if they play this game 10 times, 7 times out of 10, Barca's going to win. But like I said, 3 out of those 10 times that Arsenal could do it. They've got the quality, and especially they're really fortunate in this position. Arsenal are really fortunate in the position that they've got an inform Alessio Russo, and right now one of the best strikers in Europe. And when you've got one of the best strikers in Europe firing on all cylinders, you've got a fighting chance. You know what I mean? You've got a great chance. So would love it for an English club to do it. And going back to Russo, I thought she was one of the difference makers. You had uh, Caldente, who's been a brilliant stand-up player from all season, scored a great goal. But Russo, that third goal, just like you mentioned, just after half time, they were 2-0 up. They were in a great position. And it was her self-determination that scored that third goal. And the moment that happened, you knew the game was theirs because she had the ball. The ball kicked out. I can't remember. She like bullied like the defender for Leon, and she kind of just where she was so determined to get that ball that somehow through the mix of it all, she ended up getting the ball off the defender and setting up, pass it on to another player, then put her through. And it was just sheer determination, that positive mental strength for someone who was determined to make her own luck and get a goal. It was really great to see.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of Russo, obviously the result on Wednesday night with their game against Villa wasn't
Yes,
was a
well,
surprise for different reasons,
yeah,
but you could see the difference that she makes to that team when she came on in the second half. Because again, like Chelsea did today, Arsenal there was some rotation for their game at
yeah.
Villa.
Can we just say Aston Villa 5, Arsenal 2, just for anyone listening? It was a surprise, wasn't it?
It was a real surprise. It was one of the best first halves I've seen this season. I mean,
Yeah,
the whole
credit to
game,
Villa. Let's
the
yeah,
whole game was great, but we've spoken a couple of times about kind of the disappointment that I've had with Villa, because I look at that squad on paper
yeah,
and I just go like, how is this going so wrong? And up until a couple of weeks ago, um, you wondered whether the new manager was gonna have the time, or
yeah. The
was
patience.
going to be given the opportunity and you could see in the last few weeks it's starting to click. But they were incredible. Like, um, against Arsenal, they played Missy Bokearns and Jordan Nobbs in centre midfield, and Rachel Daly playing as a 10. So that it was like that midfield three, but of a two and then a one ahead. And I thought Kearns and Nobbs, like they just dominated the Arsenal midfield. And Arsenal didn't help themselves with some of the efforts in playing out from the back, and they gave away the ball in some dangerous places. But Salmon and Hansen just used their pace to real real effect, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Like, game of football. Like, I was saying to people, like, if you're, it's
Yeah.
six, it was a 6 o'clock kickoff. I was like, if you're not watching this, get on this, because this is a great game. But like those four down the middle were just brilliant.
It's
And
funny because my notes were like literally what you've just said, word for word, is pretty much it. It's like for the first time it like clicked, and it's like where have this Villa team been? Like they
yeah,
played like they just looked terrific. And like yes, some of like you said, some of the players were rested for Arsenal, but regardless of that, there was still some strong players, and they just caught Arsenal on the counter. Arsenal's tactics played into Villa's game, like Villa's hands, and like you said, for the first time those players turned up. It felt like, and I said, Kirsty Hansen scored a rocket of a goal, but
mm,
Salmon and Daly, the last couple of games, like they just looked a real threat. You mean, and Salmon with a pace, it was just great to see Villa operating again and looking good.
yeah. She must be one of the quickest players in the WSL, Ebony Salmon. And you know, we spoke about it maybe once or twice before. Like, she seemed as if like she was that player, 4 or 5 years ago, was like, this is the next big thing to watch. She is, and it it for whatever reason it hasn't quite turned out maybe the way that many people would have liked. But she she was so good the other night. Like, just her assist and her goal, um, sorry, her assist, but her runs off the ball, her
Yeah,
pace was just, it just couldn't be handled. And
no,
and I think it's a real asset that perhaps Villa haven't been able to get the best out of this season. But I could see it starting to click. But they were able to win the ball high, break quickly, and to put 5 goals against Arsenal, again in front of a decent crowd at Villa Park as
yeah, I was
well.
pleased for them for
It,
that.
yeah, it was really good. I don't know what the pricing structure was, but it was a 6 o'clock kickoff. But like, I think up in the Midlands, I think it may have still been half term. So it was a real opportunity for, the weather was good. If you could get off work, like dads and daughters, mums and daughters, dads and lads, whatever, you could get the family in there. But yeah, it was great. It was a really good performance. But again, like, they were 2-0 up at half time, and they still had to kind of, they were helped by getting again a quick goal, in the second half, which made it 3-0. But then Arsenal Arsenal were able to pull a couple back towards the end, and you saw, I think, again, like I said about Russo, like her in particular, it was some of those players that came on. But by that point, Villa had already scored 4, I think,
Yeah.
and it was game over. But they were exceptional. So yeah, for Arsenal, this was a real mixed bag this week. but they play Brighton tomorrow. Are you expecting um, rotation, rests, or
But
do
the
you think
thing
they
is
go
that
back?
the Champions League finals not they've got what they've got about 4 weeks, haven't they?
Okay.
4 weeks. So you think rotations shouldn't be an issue yet because if it was Champions League final in a week's time, yeah, you would be resting players. But tomorrow, you should think that they'll be after being hurt and stung by Villa, they'll want to kind of get a strong team out. Um,
Yeah, I think I'm with you. You look at that table, like I said, it's 12-point cushion now, but Man United are only a point behind them, and I don't think they'd want to relinquish that runners-up spot. Um, United today, they guaranteed Champions League for themselves next season and pushed City out of the competition because they've only come in fourth, and
and I
there's
think
a
that's
four.
deserved. Man United have been good this season.
Yeah, really, really good, and we'll get to them. But I think I'm with you. I think with Arsenal, they've got enough time and they've got enough depth in that squad that I think they could play their best team. They could start their best team. Obviously, again, we talk about wanting the league to improve here in England. Not that I assume anybody from anywhere else is
Actually,
listening or
you'd be
watching to this,
surprised.
but it is it's a day off for everyone pretty much tomorrow. It's a holiday day, so in terms of like Brighton tomorrow, the weather's been good this week. Brighton isn't far from London. It's a 4 p.m. kickoff. There's no, there could be a really good turnout there, and I think yeah, I think like you said, Champions League finals a couple of weeks away. I think players, whilst they do need rest, I think when you're coming into a big game, more than anything else, you want to have some rhythm, you want to have some minutes in the legs, and you want to feel like you're on form. If Russo can score a goal tomorrow and a goal in the final game of the season, she's going to be bouncing into the Champions League final. Hopefully, lift that, whack on the Lionesses shirt and go lift another trophy in the summer, and pick up a golden boot maybe. But no, yeah, I just it was kind of like for me just that game on Wednesday. Arsenal didn't lose it. Villa went and won it. They were
Yeah.
they were the better team, and it was a really good performance. And like I said, you start to wonder now: is this clicking for the new
Well,
manager? But
the
I think
confidence came in, didn't it? Because
yeah,
you look,
I think the biggest issue for Villa is I think they've got quite a few players out of contract this season, and you wonder whether they're going to want to stay or like how that's going to work out. Um, I mean, today they picked up another 3 points away to West Ham
yes, a
again.
3-2 against West Ham.
Yeah, and neither team are fighting for anything in the league other than like finishing paces of pride. But again, another really good performance with Salmon scoring early again for Villa, Rachel Daly on the score sheet again. Um,
It was a great
and
combination. One of the goals where I think they set each other up. I think it was maybe Daly or Salmon set the other one up. But they were a nice little bond, forming
yeah,
there.
yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the team sheet now because I've not had a chance to kind of pick up, but it was rather than Hanson, it was Salmon and Daly up front with Kearns behind them. But for Arroyo, the manager, like I said, I think it must be starting to click a little bit because, you know, West Ham aren't the best team in the WSL by any stretch of the imagination, but they're tough nut to crack at times, and especially at home. Rhian Skinner knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
She is a really astute WSL manager. And I think for her, she'll be frustrated that after going 1-0 down, they actually, went 2-1 up, and to kind of lose that lead 5-6 minutes before half time to Daly's equaliser, and then to concede a goal again in the first kind of 10 minutes of the second half for that winner, while it's been a mixed week for Arsenal, for Villa, that's been a real positive week. If I think if you said to most Villa fans, you've got Arsenal at home, West Ham away, it wouldn't be unusual. Kind of, I think maybe 3 4 weeks ago, you'd probably look at that and go, point from those
Yeah,
2 games, and
yeah,
they've come out with six, and that's really put that's put them, you
yeah.
know,
It's jumped him right up.
yeah, that's put Spurs and Leicester below them, as well as Palace, who were already relegated. So, a real good week for them. Um,
I think you get some credit goes to, like I said, Ebony Salmon's really starting to find her form and find her rhythm in the team, and her and Grant, who kind of has been playing right back, uh, and kind of a wing back. Her and Salmon on the right have been today. Against West Ham, they were causing a threat all day. They looked really good pairing.
not a bad time in the season to pick up some form just before a European tournament in the summer.
Exactly.
You know, just
Yeah.
saying. Hashtag.
Well, just
I'll
interesting.
just mention it for a mate.
Salmon's an outside shot, but you never know.
I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Pleasantly so.
Yeah.
Pleasantly so, because I think. I th-
If there's injuries, it's a possibility. If
Yeah, but,
everyone's
but
fit,
we've talked about this. There is a real lack of options other than Russo in that number nine position. And while Salmon's not a classic number nine, for whatever reason, Beth England doesn't seem to be going this summer, despite the fact that she's like fourth or fifth top goal scorer in a league with a team of hers that now sits in the bottom three.
yeah.
I don't obviously whatever she does that she ain't getting into that squad. They had the young girl come up for the friendlies last time, and it's great that she scored on her debut, but she's been playing like women's championship football this season. You know, uh, sometimes sometimes taking a player who has been outside the group but has got some form in the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks of the season, it's not the worst shout in the world, particularly when like I said, her great asset is her pace, and pace is really difficult to stop in football, because if you're not as quick as the person you're marking and they run past you, there's
It's a
your
nightmare.
your options are extremely limited. And if you're England and you're wanting to chase a goal or to stretch a game or just do something different, having like a proper set of wheels coming onto the pitch is, like I said, it's not the worst string to have to your bow. And so this is not me saying she should be picked or she will be picked, but because I don't think she will, but I don't think it'd be. I genuinely don't think it would be the worst thing to happen if she was a surprise call up. Like I said, just purely for her pace, why not? Why not?
Yeah. Okay. We shall see. Let's go on to some of the other games.
Do you want to do the early kickoffs, the
Yes, it was
derbies?
Liverpool Everton. So obviously we're Liverpool fans, so it was a bit disappointing. And I'll tell you what was disappointing was that if you looked at the stats of the game, Liverpool had the chances. So they had 27 shots. Liverpool, Everton had 6, and yet Everton won 2-0. Ross, what
Right.
happened?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest there. I got to the street like so it was so obviously today at the same time you had the Merseyside derby, you had the Manchester derby playing out. The Manchester derby was on Sky and the Merseyside derby's on YouTube, and I got to the stream 3 4 minutes late, and I turned the game on, and within 30 seconds an absolutely an all it was pretty rank sideways pass was played straight into the path of Everton player, broke down the wing, cut back onto the penalty spot, 1-0. But what I would say, after they went 1-0 down, Liverpool then proceeded to dominate the
Yeah,
game. I was really, really impressed with some players out there today. Um, I thought Sam Kerr was really, really good today. I thought Taylor Hines was excellent today as well.
putting some good crosses, isn't she? Some
She
good balls.
she she's a right seems a naturally right footer playing out on the left. And over the last couple of years, her left foot has really developed. But I would love to see her play at right back in a stronger position. But I thought Kerr, I thought Nagano was really good. And I thought Olivia Smith again always looks
Yes.
dangerous. I worry. There's rumours that already that after one season, Leon are looking at her, and I think that would be really really tough for Liverpool to if she
It would
you
be a
could
blow.
understand it. You could completely understand it. You know, she's 20, but I watched an interview of her where she said in the next 2 3 years she wants to be playing Champions League football.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know, it's going to be tough if you're Liverpool and you're not competing for that. It's going to be tough to keep your players. I mean, Sam Kerr already. I'm just like
Can
we
we tie her down?
like Liverpool needs to make that transfer permanent. Like if she's not getting game time at Bayern Munich, like I mean, Bayern Munich let her go out on loan in January when Stanway was injured. So at best, she's third or fourth choice. And so you
Yeah.
hope that deal will come. But she's played so well, you know, why wouldn't another WSL team? Why wouldn't an NWSL team want to take a look at her themselves? But I think for me, it was just frustrating to watch because I felt that Liverpool really dominated the game, and there's some great combinations, but they are weak in some areas. Like I think that Rachel Laws is one of the better goalkeepers in the league, but I think
Bros
at the
Courtney
back
Brosnan at Oh, go on.
they're a bit weak at the back. And like I said, it's really tough for a right footer to play out on the left. So for Hines, the one time this season that I remember seeing her play down the right was in the FA Cup away to Arsenal where they won 1-0, and I thought that Hines and Smith like really connected well, and they've got a young Spanish player on loan from Chelsea who was a natural left back, and I don't understand why. Particularly, you're not the permanent manager, Amber Whiteley. Yet. That hasn't been confirmed. So why not try something a bit different?
Take the
Um,
risk.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you're not going to get relegated. You're not going to make the European slot. I said, a couple of weeks ago, I felt that they could be in at the top of that like mini group behind those top four teams.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the play was really good, but I think there's some recruitment needs to
They
really
weren't
and
they
you
just
wonder
weren't
if
ruthless, were they? They
yeah,
just
but we've had this before when the last time the men's team won the Premier League title, the women's team were relegated to the Championship. It doesn't necessarily seem to be high up on the agenda, but they've got this new train. They've got the Melwood training. They
yeah,
brought the
yeah.
Melwood training ground back, and they've made that just for the women's teams. And so you hope maybe there's some steps are being taken, but fair play to Everton. Like I said, they didn't. You know, Brian Sorensen has signed a new contract this in the last
Yeah.
week or 10 days. They've got the new stadium at Bramley Moor Dock. There's talk about the women's team may potentially using Goodison as their home ground. But they're not the most attacking team in the world, but they had 6 shots, 4 shots on target. They put 2 of them away. You know,
Yeah.
if you're converting 50% of your chances, you're always going to give yourself a good chance of picking up some points. But it was frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
But what was great, and we'll go to United City in a second because it's the same for them. But the Liverpool Everton game was at Anfield today. It was a really good crowd out.
Yeah. It was a good crown and credit to before we move on to Everton's keeper Courtney Brosnan. I thought she had a really good game and she she saved a couple of really good shots. So credit to her.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, Man United, Man City, 2 each. Yeah,
I've got to call out. Firstly, I will call out. The game was at Old Trafford, and they looked like they had even more fans there. It was great to see so many people there for the game because it was a really good game. You
yeah.
know, like I said, I was watching the Liverpool game, which kicked off at the same time, but 2-2. Man United were down to 10 players for the last 20 minutes, and City were pushing hard. And um, fair play. Again, the best defense in the league did what it needed to do. And for with Lioness's hat on, it was great to see Clinton getting another goal. That takes her
Oh,
to 8
it was a
this
cracking
season from
header,
centre mid.
bullet header, and that the assist across from Mannion was an amazing cross. So
Yeah.
it was really nice to see.
But yeah, for Clinton, what I've really enjoyed this season is it kind of started. It was almost like her Ortoon, like it kind of. But Clinton's moved to a proper number 8 box
Yeah.
to box position, and like I said, that was our 8th league goal this season from centre midfield. That's brilliant. Like I think again, one game left this season, so it probably isn't going to happen for her. But any centre midfielder, they can get to double figures of goals for the season. That's brilliant. But she, you
I'd
know,
love to see how many goals she scored with a header this season because it's quite a few now.
yeah, yeah, I mean, but I think for me, what I find really impressive is, like I said, 8 goals from centre midfield. The top goal scorers in the league are Bunny Shaw and Alessia Russo with 12. So from centre midfield, she's only 4 behind the top goal scorers in the league.
Respect.
I think she's had a really brilliant season this season, and I think she's really kicked on. And with Stanway having not played for Bayern Munich, you know, the big worry for the Lionesses was, did they have that high energy box to box number 8 who could be in that midfield next to Kira Walsh? And Grace Clinton's just gone and made that
She has to
hers.
start.
And
She
yeah,
has
oh
to
yeah, yeah.
start
And
for
she's,
England.
even if Stanway's fit, she,
Find a
I,
way.
for me personally, and I'm not the Lioness's manager, so it doesn't matter what I think really, but I'm doing a podcast, so I have to talk
It
about what
matters.
my
Your thoughts
opinion.
matter to me.
but but yeah, like for me, it's her shirt now, and Stanway's going to have to win it back. And you know, sometimes in football, that's what happens. Sometimes it's a little bit of luck that that gets you to that point where you can be the starting player. And Stanway was pretty much nailed on. And I think for a lot of people, just like it was for United, kind of towards the front end of the season, it was kind of like, well, does Toon or Clinton play?
Yeah.
And I think they both play completely different games.
Yeah,
And
very different.
it's great to see her take that kick on this season. But again, really good. Like I said, really good turnout at Old Trafford. Really good game, 2-2. I was just,
Tell
like I said, just really happy to see Clinton get another goal this season.
Tell you what was really good to see Alex Greenwood starting and Lauren Hemp. So really good for with our England hat on. Great to see them getting some minutes and time as we enter to the Euros this summer. So
Yeah.
it's a big ask, but they're two vital players for England. So let's hopefully get as many minutes as possible. Okay. I tell you who we do need to give some credit for again. Tullis Joyce, the Man United keeper, who's kept a lot of clean sheets today. Played. I know it was 2-2 and she's conceded some goals, but she pulled off some. They could have lost, but she pulled off some great saves. And for someone who had to fill some big shoes with Mary Earps leaving, credit to her because she's took in that and become that goal, that number one,
I,
and been brilliant.
I think she's been the best goalkeeper in the league this season.
Absolutely hands down. She you can get away with the odd game, but she's been consistent and she always pulls off important saves, and she's definitely a big reason why they've kept so many clean sheets.
Oh, yeah. Huge. Yeah. Just the
Okay,
one game left
who have we
was
got
the
left? Who have we got?
obviously
Who have we
Palace
missed?
already.
Oh, Palace Leicester.
yeah, obviously, and again,
Yeah,
from the highlights, it looked like a really fun game. Well, with goals coming at some really crazy times in the game. From the highlights, because you don't have like the clock in the corner, you're not quite
yeah.
sure. But just looking at the match report, I'm looking at Leicester going 1-0 up in 45 plus two. Um, Palace pulled one back for a penalty in the 69th minute. Leicester score in 90 plus four, and we're through O'Brien, and then Larkin gets an equaliser 90 plus eight. If you were down at that ground today, you had some entertainment, didn't
I
you?
hope though that there's fans that leave a few minutes before the half time. They go to the toilet to beat the rush. Hope no one did that because they'd have missed a goal, and I hope no one left early because they'd have missed a vital
Two
goal as
goals,
well.
yeah. Joe, fair play. Again, like having just seen the highlights, it's really difficult to get a feel for the game. But looking at the game in terms of like the match stats, 65% possession for Crystal Palace to Leicester's
You know
35.
what though? Leicester 4 shots, 2 goals, so they
Yeah,
took their chances.
yeah, and same with Palace, 6 shots, 2 goals. It looked like but it looks like Leicester were perhaps under the cosh a little bit more, with Leipzig making 5 saves through the game. But like I said, it's really tough for those teams. But I think they were probably two of the favourites to go
Yeah.
down. Palace have obviously already been relegated. Leicester now in 11th, 2 points behind Spurs with a game left. It's we is it next Sunday is the final? Yeah, next is it Sunday, Saturday? Next Saturday is the last game day of the season. All the teams are
Okay.
playing, so all 6 games are kicking off at 12:30. Leicester have got West Ham. That's a game that they could, at the King Power Stadium. That's a game where they could pick up some points. Spurs are away to Everton, who are going to have a bit of bounce in their step. And I'm just in terms of the final table, if Leicester can get a win and Everton can beat Spurs, or at least hold them to a draw, there's every chance we could see Spurs finishing 11th in the
Wow.
table. And I think
Wow.
that would probably not be a fair reflection of the resources
No, it's true.
available to Spurs. Just
I
it was what just a couple of seasons ago that they were bringing in big names on loan, and um,
Clinton.
yeah, they had Grace Clinton as well. Alex Morgan obviously
Yeah.
came in on loan, and they had I don't know what's really happened there, but I struggle to watch Spurs at times. I
I
don't find
think
them
they've
particularly
got a good
exciting.
coach. They've got a good coach who's doing a good job on a quite a difficult, like, resource scenario. So you'd like to hope that it doesn't take mega backing, but some good recruitment in the summer with a bit of backing. It'd be nice to see them supply Beth England with a bit more ammo, a bit more supply, and the goals will come a lot more freer.
That's if she stays, but obviously also as well with
Yeah.
Spurs. Vicky Jepson is leaving as assistant manager.
All right.
She's taken a job with the US women's national teams under 20s.
Oh, what an
So
opportunity.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Brilliant opportunity for her. Obviously, she was at Liverpool for so long, as the manager. She was Rhiann Skinner's assistant at Spurs, stayed on when they made the change there, and she's kept on. But obviously, she's leaving at the end of the season, and it's
Okay.
another British coach heading out to the States. But yeah, I think that would be really poor. But for Leicester, I think that could be amazing for them. And as you said earlier in the show, London City Lionesses got the point
Yes,
they
yes,
needed in the Championship this season to come up. So Palace going down, London City Lionesses coming up. Really interesting story there that we'll probably go into a bit more detail next time. But um,
yeah. It'll be
it
interesting.
looks like Saturday's going to be a pretty exciting day next week in terms of those final games.
Yeah, I think going on to London City Lionesses, you're right. Being interesting. Let's cover that properly. But they could potentially mean business. I don't think they're going to go up to the league to just hang around at the bottom.
Yeah,
If the owner's going to do what she did at other clubs, then they're looking to invest and hopefully they'll become a formidable team.
yeah.
So
I think the thing I'm most looking forward to next Saturday, Arsenal
yes,
v Man United.
nice finish.
Point between them in the
Champ.
table. You know, if Man United were to win that, that takes them to second and knocks Arsenal down to third. That could be a really good game. Is that at the Emirates? Do we know?
So look, it would be lovely to see them do well
Because the
because
last time
let's
they
keep
played each
Russo.
other was yeah. I mean, the last time they played each other, it was at the Emirates. I went to
Yes,
the game, and then
they're
Arsenal.
home. No, yes, they're home.
Yeah.
Arsenal
So
home,
yeah, Saturday
Man United
12:30. I
away.
think that's probably the pick of the bunch. That's probably the one I'll try
Yeah,
and watch and just catch everything else up afterwards. But I think that's going to be really
tasty
intriguing because
game.
there's something in that. Yeah, I look at the other games and they're again like Leicester. It'd be great if Leicester Spurs were playing each other, but they're not. But there's something there for both of those teams. But what other than maybe some minutes for Greenwood and Hemp, what Man City going to get from playing
Yeah,
Crystal
season's over, isn't
Palace?
it?
What Chelsea going to get other from Liverpool other than potentially like the only thing really there is can they go unbeaten for the season? And then Villa at home to Brighton. Um, yeah, but
Yeah,
last week of the WSL,
I know. The
and
season's
then
almost over. It's mad. But
we
then we've got the Euros.
got Women's Champions League. Don't
Yeah.
forget
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Arsenal.
seven-a-side tournament, Dan.
Oh, yeah.
First,
The World Sevens. Actually,
yeah,
it's
we've got
quite.
the
Yeah, we've got quite
World
plenty to
Sevens,
talk about.
and then the Euros. Have you sorted out our media accreditation
Yeah,
with
I
UEFA
will.
yet, so we can go there?
Right, I'll quickly
That's
wrap
a
up,
no
close
then.
up. I'll close up. Thank you everyone for listening, and we shall tune in next time.